everybody. Welcome to the Lifetime Training Podcast. I'm your host, Jason Stella, and I've got the one and only Mr. Rob Glick. Rob is 30 years plus in the industry. He's currently the Senior Director of Programming and Innovation for Group Fitness, Yoga, and Cycling and Indoor Cycling at Lifetime. We've had many a pass. We've worked for same companies before. It's been great. And, the one thing, I interviewed Rob a little bit a couple of weeks ago prior to this, and one of the things that stood out, I actually took a note down. There was 6 people in 10 minutes. It was a short call that all came in and, said, "Hey, Rob, how are you?" And it was, the community that you're able to build. And then more specifically, you remembered each one of those people to the point where you gave them specific kudos, and took the time to stop and give them, the props. And there's not a lot of leaders. There's not a lot of people that do that. So I want to thank you for everything you're doing before we even jump into this.
Wow.
And
Wow.
just say
Thank
welcome.
you.
Yeah, no problem.
Yeah. Thank you. It's thank you for noticing that. To me, we're in the position to uplift, right?
Yeah.
And the more we can uplift others and make them feel seen and taken care of, it's what it's all about. And so I love that. And we've got such strong teams that we've worked together with for so many years that to see them flourish is what it's about. It's wonderful.
And that's, again, just flowing that's exactly what we're going to kind of get into today is, you've been primarily on the group exercise side of the coin, and, the influence that group exercise has in the industry, obviously in our clubs, is just massive. The number of people that you guys reach compared to, any of the other, training or, personal training, even small group training. And, we were talking about what's longevity, what's influence in the career, and, the need to innovate, mentally as much as it is through programming and yourself to really
Right.
have longevity in the career. So, to kind of kick it off, I love, I think, to spend a little bit of time of you. How did you get started? What was your story of, kind of going from where you started? I know you worked at Club Sport, which is a company that I worked for a short time as well. And then
Yeah.
forward to where you are today. I think it's an important story for people to understand. This is a career. You've spent your life in fitness.
Yeah, it's really funny, Jason. So, probably like so many people out there who listen, when I started, it wasn't a career, right? Like to sit down at the Christmas table or at the holiday table, whatever you celebrate, and say, "Hey, I'm going to be a fitness professional when I grow up." Would be like, "What?" And I was just so blessed with parents that were like, "Hey, whatever makes you happy, follow your heart, right? And so don't follow the money, follow your heart."
But what's funny is, though, the minute you say that at the dinner table, everybody's having the conversation with you for the rest of the time.
Right. All of a sudden, I know all about how to take care of their bum meat, right? Like exactly, 100%.
Yeah.
However, so at that time, even before that, I grew up in Southern California. I went to high school in Irvine, and then I went to college at Chapman. And initially, when I was first thinking, what do I want to be if I ever grow up, was to be a pilot.
Yeah.
And my oldest brother's a pilot, and that was the direction I was headed. But I always trained. I was always in fitness, and surfing was my first love, and it's still a big part of my life. So I was dating this woman at the time, girl, who taught aerobics at a Nautilus. I don't know if you remember Nautilus. And she challenged me. She's like, "Oh, you think you're in shape? Come take my class." And I went and took it, and I was terrible, and I was, but in me, I was like, I want to get good at this. So I'd go all the time to her class, and I fell in love with it. And it wasn't even a thing yet, it was just the one offering aerobics. I think we had aerobics and what we called at the time body sculpt. And that's all, which is so funny because those aerobic classes were very anaerobic, but anyway, but I fell in love with it. And so I started working in the health club industry. I worked in the cafe, and then I took a lot of classes, and people at that time said, "Why don't you teach?" And that's what it took. I'm like, okay, yeah, I want to. And so I started teaching, and it's so funny because I played the drums as a kid.
Nice.
And yeah, right. And I knew how to be on the beat, but I didn't understand musical phrasing. Yeah. So wonderful mentors from a place called Exercise Bodyworks. At Bodyworks, Patty would say, okay, let me help you hear the music to move to the music. And I was like, oh my gosh, thank you. And another guy who's long in the industry named Charles Little and Donna Richardson did a workshop on that. And I was like, oh, okay, that's how it works. And so anyway, I started teaching, but there was no formal training. You know, ACE and APA were, you know, just getting up and running. And so I did a fitness specialist program with a guy by the name of Leon Ski at Orange Coast College. And he was amazing. And it was like, you know, really how to lift properly. And people were just starting to do personal training. And they would ask me, can you train me? And I'd be like, I don't know how to train me. Like, I just do what I do. So I felt like I needed to have an education to be able to train other people. If they were going to say, I'm going to put my care and my well-being in your hands, I needed to have something behind me to make me feel confident to do that. And there was another trainer at the place I was at, and he was beautiful, you know, just Greek Adonis. But people either got in great shape or got hurt. And I was like, there's something wrong here, you know? And the great shape part, great, but the hurt, I couldn't hurt anybody. So that was the beginning, was this fitness specialist program. And then at Chapman, I did this amazing program that was to become a physical therapist. That's what I thought I wanted to do. But I ended up, it's an exercise science with an athletic training and nutrition program. It was wonderful. I did a lot of internship in physical therapy with an amazing sports medicine doctor who was with the U.S. Olympic wrestling and diving team, and he focused on shoulders and knees. But I realized quickly, because then I was mostly training, teaching group fitness, and working in a physical therapy clinic. I loved when people came to us and said, you know, I want your help. Not I'm injured and need your help. There's just a difference in energy when people came to us saying, you know, I want to change. At that time, we didn't call it lifestyle, but I want to change. And can you help me? And I really loved that. And I always just was much more comfortable in the group setting. You know, having that energy of the group. Just, I take a ton of classes. I've always taken classes. I just thrive in that space.
And I think it's so, you know, my first training job, and one thing to go back, I don't know if you knew this, but my dad actually has a gold record, or he's passed, but he has a gold record for the first Jazzercise album that was released. Yeah.
Well, you got to hold on to that.
It's pretty funny. Yeah.
So
but
funny.
But that was me, you know, I was working in a small studio before I got started, you know, in the club setting, and it was about 50 minutes away from my house. And it was a tiny studio, but they had 9 or 10 spin bikes. And I was just like, well, I'm not going to drive 45 minutes home and then come back and do that thing. So I'm like, let me just start taking this. I'll get in shape. And next thing you know, I ended up starting to teach, and she was a Mad Dog instructor. And so I started to teach, and I started to teach, you know, cycling and spin, the old school isolations and all that fun stuff. And I said it when I started, then when I moved into Lifetime, ironically enough, you know, I taught Monday, Wednesday, Friday at 12:15, met my wife in that particular, or she used to take it all that class all the time. And I would have, you know, 35, 40 people in that room, and I could tell them to, hey, we're going to do head spins today, and, you know, and break dance, and they would do it. And the connection in group, and so many people miss that, especially if they're just one-on-one trainers. The connection in group is uncanny. And ironically enough, one other thing is, the girl who taught me this spin class, I ended up just getting her a job with Lifetime about 2 years ago.
Cool.
And she's teaching now at the Tempe Lifetime in Arizona. So it, you know, full circle, it's pretty cool.
That's
so
amazing.
But, you know, I think that's a great place too to start is, you know, obviously you've seen some crazy connections in community that you've created, and then seen others as well. And it's created a huge community that you have when you go teach, you know, all over the world at IDEA and all those things. You know, what would you say are the kind of the keys there, you know, and why shouldn't more people who maybe don't teach it, and it's not for everybody, that's another key, but, you know, to transition to do both, and how valuable that is?
You know, so much in there. First, I want to go back, because if you think about the thread of, if even the short amount of time we've talked about, connection is key, right? And that community connection piece that you keep speaking of is really what's going to be more and more valuable as we go forward. We've all become addicted to our electronics, and our electronics keep us isolated. And, you know, I don't care how people move, and we'll talk about that more.
Yeah.
I care that people move more, right? Our bodies were designed to move. We age when we stop moving, and the more we move, you know, the younger we stay from the inside out. But it's really about community. And in order for people to be super successful, they have to create connections. And content is in the background. Like, everybody focuses on content. I spent 2 hours making my class and an hour making my playlist, and I come in, but I've got no connection with the people. You're not going to be successful, and you're going to be frustrated. You're going to like, but do you know how hard I worked on this class, right? Back when you taught cycle classes, you know, it's people put a lot of work into that class, but that your education and your knowledge and the time you took to be prepared to walk in the room is like the roots of the tree. That's your foundation. So you can relax and not have performance anxiety. So you can look out, see who's there, and connect and create relationships. Because, you know, without those relationships, people could do a million types of movement. And that's what's first and foremost. So I would say that's where people need to focus. And if even, you know, you've seen it, right? We went from there was just one-on-one and large group, and now the lines are so blurred, right? And I think almost every trainer, especially in this COVID time, is got to be very focused on small group training. And I think every large group trainer looks at, like, how can I have a small group, right? And then how big the group is virtually doesn't matter, right? How big the group is physically might matter if you want to be able to see their form and things like that, if that's important to you. But
well, and, you know, and that again goes into a whole nother topic of, you know, there's so many times I've seen, I probably did it myself to a certain extent at some point, and then I got wiser, is you've got the trainers that are looking at, oh, what's going on in the group X. And it's just like, well, then go change it. Like, go help or go do something. But at the end of the day, you know, these people are going to, and this is my take, and I'd love your take, is these people are going to move anyway. They're going to go and do something that they love and that they find fun to a certain extent. You could loosely use that word, right? And something that they're going to connect to in that particular instructor. So, you know, if people, my bash is if you're going to bash a group exercise class, then you might as well go bash every single sport that anybody's playing, because there's more injury in that sport than there is in what people are trying to do in group. Now, there's education, and that's one thing too that I love about you, Rob, is, you know, you've got your degree, you've got, not that everybody needs that, I'm not saying that, although it helps for sure, but you've continued, even in our last conversation, of you going on and continue education. That's when we talk about longevity in the career, that's an absolute must, to be able to go forward. But, you know, I'd love to hear, how have you handled those situations when you've got kind of the I know it all, I just went to a course and I think I know it all, and they're coming in bashing people?
Sure. So it's really interesting to me, and I'd say it easily this way. Okay. If I can inspire you to be a participant for life, I can help you move better. But if I analyze you so deeply that I paralyze you, then guess what? I've lost you for life. And most of our population doesn't move enough. So if we get, you know, a group of people, 35, 50 people in a room working out and moving together, and they love it so much and they keep coming, don't look at them today. Look at them in a year and take a snapshot from day 1 to day 365 and go, oh my gosh, look at how much better their movement quality is. Look how much better their kinesthetic awareness is. Look at how much happier they are and how much joy they live with. And then you're not going to be so like, oh my gosh, you're not going to be looking in the fishbowl and being the person who's the critic. Instead, see the magic. Oh my gosh, there's so much magic in all those people moving and whatever the movement is. And that's why I think, you know, when people get caught up in what it is, that's the problem. You know, and why it's so important to continuously innovate is to find the thing that's going to get people off their couch, off their butt, out of a seated position, and up moving. And, you know, none of us fitness professionals should care if that's dance, yoga, you know, functional training.
Yep.
You know, I don't know what dysfunctional training is, but
Yeah.
you know, like,
Yeah.
right? It's
Yeah,
like,
exactly.
you know, whatever it is, when we see people moving and somebody inspiring that, we should all give kudos to the person who's
and
doing that.
it just comes back to the ego at the end of the day, and
Right.
and the jealousy if they're not in front of people, you know, and how can you do that? So you know, to kind of moving now, you know, is, you know, obviously you've had a long career in health and fitness, super successful now, you know, like I said, international speaker, and, you know, then doing what you're doing with Lifetime, and still teaching yourself. What are some keys that you found to make sure and allow you to flourish, you know, and maintain truly a career that you can retire from in fitness?
Yeah, right. Gosh, it's crazy because it wasn't a career, and
Yep.
I will retire from it.
Yep.
And but to answer your question, I think stay curious, stay inquisitive, and be more of a student than you are a teacher. And I think, you know, that's for me, I love taking classes, all of them. You know, you and I talked about it during the period of COVID that I was furloughed. I did
Yeah, likewise.
FRC, right? I did
Yep.
kin stretch. I did a 300-hour yoga teacher training,
Yep.
and I checked out tons of people online and took classes, because my thirst for knowledge and excellence and understanding just gives me more tools in the toolbox to help
Awesome.
people, right?
Yep.
And I think that's a thing. And then there's another thing that's really curious. So we talked about club sport, and when I went to work for them, it was none of the things that we're talking about, and didn't even know. So they asked me if I could help and consult on their programming. And when I sat down with Steve Gilmore and Ralph, the owners and the director at the time, the president of the fitness division, they said, you know, we used to have a conference they used to have a conference at one of their club sport locations in Northern California. And they said, one day we saw after your presentation, you were helping clean and reset for the next class and making sure everybody knew where to go. And I didn't notice that, you know, we just do what we do, right?
Yep.
And they're like, because of that, we'd like to talk to you about a job. Not because of what I did on the stage, not because of getting the class or the content, but because the fact that we're a part of the team, and whatever needs to get done, we do. I think that's huge in longevity, right? Being willing to change. Right now, I'm a studio manager, so I'm what you said, the senior director, blah, blah, blah. I'm also a studio manager in the San Clemente Club, because post-COVID, we need help in clubs. I'm helping with the region, because again, I'm growing so much, right? To have a team again is exciting. To help a region is exciting. So I think that the main thing in longevity is stay curious and stay open and continue to grow.
Yep. That's awesome. Fantastic. You know, and you know, the mindset change too, like you had said, the ability to get past titles and all that other stuff. Same thing where, you know, got to do what you got to do to make sure that we get forward, but you know, we move forward. But, you know, you said you went through 3 different courses during furlough. So you were not getting paid, and you were spending money to better yourself, to when it comes back to be even better and stronger than ever, which is, you know, just fantastic. And I think a lot of people lose that concept of, you have to continually sharpen the saw, you know, as Stephen Covey would put it.
Right.
And
I love, like, so in the 300-hour, one of the things we talk a lot about is blind spots, right? We all have blind spots, and you need a coach. You need somebody outside. That's why you need a trainer, or you need people that you can trust. And so in that, it's like constant feedback, you know, and that's another thing I love about Lifetime, is we're this culture of feedback is ingrained into who we are, and we're always helping each other grow. So in the 300-hour yoga teacher training that I did with Life Power Yoga, Johnny Pest, it's a life course. You dig in deeper to, like, who are you and who do you want to be? And again, resetting who you are, both in integrity and how you want your legacy to be, who are you moving forward. And then, you know, it's really interesting. So I was mostly interested in kin stretch and how we could bring that into our programming, because it's very much about mobility, right? And we all talk the talk, like, well, mobility is what it's about, your strength to flexibility relationship, and what's your usable flexibility. But there hadn't been really a program that focused on what is the mobility that you have. And so in yoga, and like yoga's my soul, but we go into half pigeon and you're in a passive range of motion. And then you get up and you have no hip mobility, And so I wanted to really understand kin stretch, and to do kin stretch first, you had to do the functional range control course. And then I did the kin stretch course. And it was, again, another light bulb for me. It's like, here, we've been in the industry for so long. And I know we talked about this last time, but it's like, we haven't focused on really joint integrity and just going joint by joint and looking at the health and well-being of the joints. And so that's what came out of that program. And it's just more to utilize, like I said, in the toolbox, but also to just like go, wow, been in the industry for a long time, still know so little and have so much to learn.
Yeah. And, that brought up a huge point that, how different forms of exercise, whether we call it yoga, strength training, Pilates, you name it, how they've been able to evolve. And I know there's the purists that talk about, hey, this is the way it was done by X yoga guy or X, whomever, and this is the way it should be done. But they didn't have things like kin stretch. They didn't have things like muscle activation technique or whatever it is. I'm just using those as examples to say, okay, here's a position that I'm in yoga. And when I come out of it, I'm a little bit cranky, getting out of that position. Well, now you can take that tool and apply something to, be able to help people get into those positions better and get out of those positions without feeling the way I put it as cranky, which is amazing about evolution.
Well, and I think, what's so interesting, and we mentioned this, those programs evolve. They evolve to where we are. And unfortunately, people keep them stuck, right? So BKS Iyengar is the Iyengar side of yoga. So often in the Western world, we think a lot of Iyengar yoga. You'll hear Hatha, which is kind of all forms of yoga, Iyengar and Ashtanga. But what's interesting is he has an interview on YouTube, and they were like, it was almost like the interviewer was trying to set him up to say something derogatory, and he didn't go there. They're like, what do you think about all the changes to all the poses people are making in the Western world? And, and he's like, I think it's beautiful. I think it's wonderful, because this is a living, breathing form that's science-based. And if it's not taking people, again, nothing's about the pose. We shouldn't, like one of the things that we often say is, don't use your body to get into the pose, right? Like, it's like you see a picture of a pose and I'm going to make that pose with my body. That's not the point. The point is, use that pose to get into parts of your body that are stuck and hinged up and kind of prevent you from being the best you, because you're sore and cranky, right? Like you said, when you have a headache or a backache, it's hard for you to be as nice as you can, right? And that's more like the ancient culture of yoga, is to say, hey, for you to really be clear, you need to hopefully be in a body that's healthy. And so it's not about any of these poses. But anyway, it would have evolved, right? And it's shame on us to keep it stuck, right? Shame on us to think, oh, well, that's not how it was done 2,000 years ago or 1,000 years, or as it relates to vinyasa, a couple, not even a long time ago. That's not how it was done. Yeah, because it's a living, breathing form. And the more we learn and the more we grow, the more we should apply it to how we move. But what's really interesting to me is the philosophy behind it hasn't changed much, because we still gossip. Like, so, I'm going 2,000 years ago, they were talking about like, don't gossip. Like, they were gossiping 2,000 years ago. No way, right? That's a new modern thing, right? Don't harm others, right? Like, those things don't change, right? So don't harm yourself, right? And that's kind of comes back to what we do, right? Like, it's like, hey, you know what? If I learn this great new kettlebell move, and so now I'm excited to show it to somebody, but it's going to cause them harm, in all of our approaches, we should be non-harming.
Exactly. Well, and I think that leads, a perfect segue into something we've talked about, and I know we're both passionate about, is, the pop culture influencers and what you're seeing out there. And I've even got a little frustrated at times seeing certain things that are being pushed out, and the person's got 3 million followers, and at the end of the day, we were talking about continuing education, and we're talking about what we see the influencers do. And a lot of times the influencers are putting out the most basic, fundamental information. Hopefully it's not bad information, but for the most part, it's, hey, this is a squat, and let me show you how to squat better. Or,
Yeah,
they're
yeah,
basic. And I think that's the blessing and the curse. I'm all for continuing education, as I know you have, and we've spent hours and thousands of dollars to continue that beyond school. But yet we get so down that rabbit hole sometimes that we forget that what people need the most is whatever's going to get them to move the next step forward. And that's sometimes those basic fundamental things. So, what can you say, from that standpoint, and what have you seen?
yeah. I think so. Is it Einstein that said this? Correct me who gets credit for it, but genius comes in our ability to take the complex and make it simple.
Yep.
So whoever gets credit for that quote,
Yep.
kudos, right?
Mhm.
And I think that there's a lot of people out there who complicate the simple to have the mirror shine back on them.
Yep.
And hey, I celebrate the influencer who has a bunch of followers if they're moving, right? Because all of us should just say, hey, the population needs to move more. And whoever's inspiring them to move, fantastic. And we get so caught up in the minutia. And again, kind of back to what I said before, don't miss the magic. Why are those people following them? You might think they're following them because of aesthetic reasons, maybe for a little while, but that's going to wear off quickly. There's got to be something deeper, and don't miss the connection.
Yep.
So what I say is again, come back to really what's the objective, right? If I'm teaching a yoga class, the objective actually, that it's kind of funny, right? Like you watch pharmaceutical commercials and you hear all the side effects and you go, oh my gosh, I don't want to put that in my body, right? Well, the side effects of a great yoga experience should be better flexibility, mobility, strength. But the objective is to get quiet, get connected, and to really be present, right? Like just to show up. If you come to a cycle class, the objective is improved cardiovascular fitness, right? Now there's might be a class like we have power, that the objective is to help you be a better cyclist, have better power on your outdoor bike indoors. That's a little different objective, but if that's the objective, I want to stay true to the objective in the background, but I want to make the experience inspiring in the foreground to the people that are there.
Yep.
And so I think it's like, look up, see who's there, remember the objective that they signed up for, and don't over-educate, inspire.
Yep. And that's where, I've said it a couple of times in the podcast. Some people could be saying, hey, you're being a hypocrite right now. And what I'm saying is learn from what the influencer is doing. If they've got 2 million followers, find out how the heck they got 2 million followers,
Sure.
The marketing side of it, right? Look at the content that they're pushing out. It's basic, it's fundamental, but it's consistent and moving. What I'm saying is don't go there to learn how to do yoga, right? Like don't go there to learn how to better your craft in most cases. There might be some that are really good, but I'm saying, look at what you're trying to learn from the different people. And if you're learning how to train people through that, then stick with the fundamentals.
Sure. And I think always distill information, right?
Yep.
Like
Yep.
whoever it is, it could be somebody that you respect tremendously, but you go and you're like, that doesn't sit right with me. And that's okay, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's fantastic, actually, because we don't want to become just followers, right?
Yep.
But I think what's great, like when, again, when we talk about some of the wonderful people that you've had on your podcast, who are so smart and intelligent and have great things to say, again, it's kind of like a GPS, right? They've been there, they have the knowledge, they can help us get there quicker.
Yep.
Why, like, what do you want to do? Turn off your GPS in your car and get lost, or have somebody who's been there that can help you? And that's what you see in the great minds out there, and that's why they've had longevity. And then there's, even people like Dr. Len Kravitz, right?
Yep.
Like, I don't know if you've ever listened to any of his lectures,
Yep.
but he's talked about a guy who's brilliant but can simplify, right? Yep. And make everybody understand. And I think ultimately, and again, or the creative people like Greg Roscoff that have said, hey, let's look at this different, and brought us Matt. learn, take what works for you and sits authentically in you, and then share it with who is your community.
Mm.
One thing that was really a huge shift in me that I want to share with your listeners is teach what you learn now. So a lot of us get stuck, and I know I did this early in my career. I'm not them, and I'm not as smart as them, and I don't know as much as them, so I'm not ready to teach it. But you learn better when you teach. So once this guy's like, hey, as soon as you learn it, teach it, so you become more grounded in it, and then you'll find out where, oh gosh, I'm not sure about this. Let me get more information. I see I have a hole here. I need to gather more information. But if I don't start to try to teach what I learn, I'm not going to grow.
Exactly. And again, I've always said it a million times too, is everything you're doing is a skill. And you have to learn the skill by doing it, failing at it, and repeating it, and learning from it, and failing at it, and repeating it. And I always say, why again do you put so much expectation on yourself to be we as people to be good at something when it's the first time they've ever done it, especially kids,
Sure.
And it's just that nature that and that culture that gets ingrained in their minds.
Yeah, it's like when people first come to yoga, I always say to them, I say, imagine, so you got off an airplane in a country you've never been before, and you don't speak the language, but you're going to get around, but you're going to be awkward and feel uncomfortable, but you're not going to have any shame. You're going to expect that of yourself, right? You won't be ashamed. You won't have any shame. By 2 weeks, when I see you of being in that country, now you've got your favorite cafe, you're comfortable. You're not fluent yet, but you got your like little comfort zone, right? A year later, you're fluent. Like give yourself that same maturation process through all the things that you do. And the best learning happens in the beginner's mind. So just keep being a beginner.
That's it. Love it. Well, the one other thing too, I think we dive into is, obviously over the years, you've seen the evolution of what we did and what we're doing now. And it's funny when you're talking about playlists, it comes to mind and is like, I remember when I first started cycling, I was also a DJ and Napster had just come out. So I was like downloading streams and I would have I had my first MP3 player that was like this big. And then I moved to just having a computer and I was just like throwing the songs in and doing it. But I can't imagine teaching prior to that. Like, did you have to make tape?
Oh my gosh.
Like,
we don't want to go there. We don't want to go there. Okay. So now I'm going to really date myself. Okay. So this is so funny. So when I first started, and remember, I told you it was we called it aerobics, but it was anaerobic. We would bring vinyl.
Oh, wow. Yes.
Vinyl, a 45. We'd play it on 33. So it was fast enough. So that was
awesome. That is awesome.
And then it went quickly to mixed tapes from that. But we'd have mixtapes, and there's like a guy in LA that was making everybody's mixtapes, and we all knew, this guy. It was kind of like, the deal, right? Like, hey, who's making the best mixtapes? And so then it went to mixtapes, then of course to CDs, and like you said, and now it's so great because when you think about like Apple Music or Spotify, it's an evolution of Napster, like you said. It's just like if
they legalized it,
legalized Napster, right? And now we share playlists, and it's like, gosh, all of us, like, I create a ton of cycle playlists, a ton of yoga playlists, a ton of conditioning playlists, and I have people I follow, just like on Facebook, and check out their playlists to quickly create playlists. So it's cool. It's really cool.
Great. Cool. Well, and again, so I've always said when I first started, I got certified, in 90, I think it was 96, was the first time I got certified. And, we were bodybuilding. It was bodybuilding. That's really what it was. And I think it was right about a couple years later when kind of the boom of corrective exercise, and there was a lot of physical therapists and, the Gary Grays and the Paul Checks that were starting to boom up and bring a little bit more of the therapy or corrective or whatever you want to call that. And, so we evolved into that. And I remember seeing physical therapists being upset and, you can't do that. You can't do that. And then Obviously, nutrition was a no-no for many, many years. Obviously, the first ACE was just refer out, refer out, refer out. And obviously now nutrition is a big part within the scope that you can do. And it's a bigger scope than it used to be. And, and then I think the next evolution became the behavior modification and the, realizing that your program doesn't mean anything if you can't get people to actually do it. And a lot of what we talked about. So, and now this term well-being is being, I think, thrown around quite a bit. And I love it because I think the proper definition for well-being is to live a life of health, happiness, both mentally and physically. But, what have you seen and where do you see this thing going based on, what you've seen in the past?
Yeah. I think to share a term I heard, it's truly about inner engineering. And I think we started in the industry and you nailed it. Our industry started as a bodybuilding industry, mm-hmm. right? And people kind of miss that, right? It was all isolation and all designed around bodybuilding. And I think that we went from an industry of outer engineering, and that's not to knock bodybuilding. If that's what inspires people to train, please do that.
Yep.
But now we're in this category of inner engineering. How do I train from the inside out? And how am I engineering myself from the inside out? And it comes, I heard from this guy, Michael Caine, that I love to listen to on a podcast as well. And he says, if you use your emotional body and well-being as an indicator of your thoughts, you'll know if your thoughts are working for you, right? So we just get more sensitive, more aware, right? Like this word awareness becomes, we think of it as like this daunting word. No, it just means I'm more aware. Like before, I lost my temper and I wasn't aware of why I lost my temper. But before I did things that didn't make me proud of myself, I wasn't aware. Now I'm aware and now I'm changing, right? Yep. And I think that's all integrated into exactly what you said. And how you get there, what your mode is, almost doesn't matter. I think that
as long as you take the step.
As long as you take the steps.
Yeah.
As long as you do the work. And you have to do the work and it has to be an action. It's got to be a verb. You've got to be moving.
And what I love you said too is in great word and analogy is inner, is because how often, again, over the years, have you seen people who look tremendously fit, who are not healthy mentally, who are not healthy physically. And, it's just because you look fit doesn't mean you are fit, and, or I should say healthy. And, the mental well-being, obviously what everybody's going through right now and through social media and all the things that can negatively start to really run your mind for you, so to speak.
Right. Well, and I think, it's crazy because if you look at the world, you are a human being, we always are in a constant influx of change. But if we get stuck, and I think, again, back to your early question, what's helped me have longevity is I embrace change, right? I'm constantly looking for that new program that can inspire more people to get active, right? And so, whether it's partnering up with a company like Total Gym to create gravity, or with a company like Schwinn to create cycling, before that was Star Trek, whatever, right? Partnering with Lifetime to create professional development and programs, the main thing is, when we take a moment and go, we are in a constant influx of change, and I'm okay with change. I don't know why people go, I'm not okay with change. Change that, right? Get okay with change, because it's a constant. And from one second to the next, things aren't the same. So now we get slammed with COVID, right? And I get it for very, very real reasons. Some people are struggling right now. Like, people have had people in their immediate family die from this. And for those people, my heart goes out to them. They've had people close to them get very sick. My heart goes out to you. That's real. And I have empathy for that in a big, big way. But what I've learned through this whole situation is every problem creates an opportunity for a new solution. And just be solution minded with your own, with your own training. Yeah.
Well, and it's look at what we've had to do over the years, ourselves too, and just all the other people that have come out on top. And, I think that is just the key. And I think at the end of the day, the last thing I've got really is a quote I don't know if you got it from somebody or if you said it, is that at the end of the day, movement and exercise is a prescription for a better life. And you have to understand what is your prescription. And I don't know if you'd love to go into that, because it's just beautiful if you really think about it.
Yeah. I think it's like we said before. The beautiful thing about what we get to do is the side effects of what we do is gonna create a happier, healthier, more balanced human being.
Yep.
Right? And it's, if we approach it that way, if we just think this is our prescription, and you can, again, what was it? Not Hippocrates, right?
Mhm.
It's like, your food is your medicine.
Yep.
And medicine is your food, right?
Yep.
Right?
It's Aristotle or Hippocrates. I can't remember which one.
Yeah, whoever, I'm not sure which one, right?
Yep.
It's like Einstein before, right? But
Yep.
great quote, right? But it's all of this stuff that we do, who we communicate with, how we take care of ourselves, and then how we take care of others. And that we're truly living what we're speaking about, that's the prescription. And again, that's the prescription to, like you said, well-being. Yep. Right?
Mm-hmm.
And then luckily, and not enough people pay attention to this, like I said before, notice how you're doing. Are you anxious? Something's not working. Mm-hmm. Are you stressed? Like, we're going to have stress. Stress is a good thing, right? Stress isn't bad. That's how we get stronger, is because of stress, right? But are we coping with stress okay? If not, look at how you're thinking. Change your thoughts, change your environment.
Yeah. And so somebody said to me, is the most important conversation that you can have is the one with yourself. And understanding that and becoming aware of that, which again, obviously is the power of meditation, yoga, and some of those things that allow you to do that and just take a breath, man, it's been awesome. Anything else you have to add? I mean, I could go on for days with you, man.
Well, I just want to tap into what you said, because I think it's really important for everybody who's on your podcast. That idea of meditation, I just want to leave with that, because I think so many people say, I get a lot of people coming to me and go, I can't do yoga because I can't touch my toes. And my response to that is like, okay, I can't do cardio because my heart's weak, right?
Yeah.
I can't strength train because my muscles are weak, right?
Yeah.
What would you tell me? It's obvious, right? But then they say, oh, I could never meditate. There's way too much noise in my head. I'm too active. I'm too busy. Okay. Get quiet, get more productive. And I don't get credit for this. Somebody said it, and I don't know who to give credit to, but our minds are normally like a shaken up snow globe, and there's all that debris floating around. There's no clarity. And a moment of quiet, a moment of coming to your breath and just paying attention to your breath and not the white noise in your mind, is all of that debris in that snow globe settling to the bottom. Yep. And when that debris settles, you have clarity, even for a fraction. Well, that's why people need it.
Yeah. Well, and the thing that when I started to do it too, I started using the guided meditation apps to help me do that. And what you've quickly come to find out is that that's part of you recognizing that you have a lot of those thoughts is you, in essence, meditating. That's step one. Now you keep repeating that over and over again. And that's when you get better. So don't get frustrated when it happens. You should celebrate when that happens.
Right. You're just, again, building awareness. You notice, gosh, my brain's really noisy. I've got a lot, like I keep complaining about how loud the music is out here. Can somebody turn off the music up here?
Yeah.
Meditate, and when your life's out of control, like when your computer doesn't work, what do? Yeah. You hold the power button down. Yeah. It shuts off, right?
Reset.
It's just a moment of reset. And that moment of reset gives you a second to come back functioning better.
Yeah. It made me think of back in the day when we had Nintendo and that didn't work and you'd take the cartridge out and you'd give it the and that was the reset. Oh, that's great.
Totally.
Oh man. Well, thank you so much, Rob. It's been a pleasure. And I can't wait to get into one of your classes and see you in person. I got to get to that San Clemente Club too. I heard it's absolutely gorgeous.
You've got to come visit. And when you do, you're going to teach cycling again.
Oh, I would love to do that. And you got to get me on the water. I've never actually gotten up on a surfboard. I've only tried twice.
We'll take you out at Doheny. It's this long, mushy, slow wave, and you'll get up for sure.
Oh, perfect.
Money back guarantee.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Rob. You have a great day, man.
You too. Pleasure talking to you, Jason.
Likewise.
Bye-bye.
Take care.